like the seats of an 86 Delta 88 coupe on D's and Bones, baby. That's what I'm talking about. Yeah.
Going live in a minute, Blizzard King. This is Winter Dennis Sperling Podcast. You are rocking with the realest black men represented. Ain't no lies, cause we winning. Catching flies, ain't no feelings. Uncle D, we the villain, baby. We just left the village, baby. Now we in them villas, baby. Dennis Sperling Podcast, tuning in, we get it, baby. You can hate the player, hate the game. We love all you haters. Hate watch, hate watch. Calling lovely ladies, hands on your knees. You can thank us later. We snatching the crowns off of queens, we obliterate them. Tell the truth, shame the devil, they trying to eliminate us. You begging the sipping haters, peeling layers off potatoes. Whoa, Southern Cadillac music like Outkast. Ain't jumping without bass. Dennis Sperling Podcast. Whoa. Southern Cadillac music like Outkast. Ain't jumping without bass. Dennis Sperling Podcast. Whoa.
We have to clean up what's going on in our house before we do anything else. $15 years ago now, the Galleria area is ghetto. A lot of people come in from out of town. It's become popular. It's become a tourist spot. And so a lot of people show up from all these different places and they go there to be seen. You got rappers in there. And, all money don't mingle. You understand what I'm saying? I don't want to mingle with rapper money. I don't really even want to mingle with sports figure money. I'm cool with the doctors, the lawyers, the engineers, the businessmen. I don't want to hang out with a bunch of athletes because I don't like the crowd they bring.
You are now rocking with the best. Uncle D. Loud with it, speak it with your chest. Uncle D. South reppin', started in the West. Uncle D. Conversation, cashing out them checks. Uncle D. We can do it how you want to. Uncle D, lovely ladies' favorite uncle. Corporate meetings came up out the jungle. All you ratchet boogers, baby, we don't want you. Stagnated, baby, gotta grow. I can't with you, vibration too low. Somebody might mistake you for that's not somebody might think you work a pole.
Fingers off my paint job. Look at these teeth.
Okay,
watch this. What? Oh, look at them teeth, boy. Look at these. Ooh, somebody screenshot that and blow it up and email it to me. Look at that. That's an angle right there. I'm broke.
All money don't mingle. Reason why most of y'all are single. Yeah. All money ain't the same. Sometimes you gotta charge it to the game. Yeah. All money don't mingle. My wallet, I don't keep a bunch of singles. Yeah. Oh, now you see me rising up. Black men is them. We don't give a what. Yeah. They sit at home and they hate watch. Walk around and they flip flops on your coffee table. Got a ziplock. Dirty couch, your lips out. Sink dirty dishes. What this about? Kids in and out the house. Unstable, no food on the table. Trying to dip out. Hair hat and her makeout. That's makeup? That's rip out. R.I.P. to her fish mouth. That tuna fish below the belly button. BBL shaped like jelly smuckers. Booty thicker than peanut butter. She ain't never ever worth the trouble. Gone girl, you can keep the bubble. Sit down wrong and you leak the bubble. Simple cause wanna just eat the bubble. Smell real strong, preheat the bubble. Instagram, they wanna see the bubble. Need cash app just to feed the bubble. Why we overseas for the season bubble? The kind at the gym won't believe the bubbles. Top notch, we can see the hustle. Money don't mingle, we bleed with muscle. All money don't mingle. Reason why most of y'all are single. Yeah. All money ain't the same. Sometimes you gotta charge it to the game. Yeah. All money don't mingle. My wallet, I don't keep a bunch of singles. Yeah. Oh, now you see me rising up. Black men is them. We don't give a what. Yeah.
And women are tired of broke women. Okay, we're tired, we're frustrated, we keep the game. Are y'all with me? Hit the number one button. I mean, I just think this needs to be said. We are tired and frustrated with broke women who expect others to pay their way in relationships.
It is a lie. It is a lie.
Let's just say now, thank you. We're going to take 5 minutes. Be back in 5.
Have pride in yourselves. Don't be so hard on yourselves. That's the other thing. Don't let this world keep kicking you and making you feel like you're not good enough. You plenty. I don't care if you're 10 pounds, 50 pounds overweight, 30 pounds underweight. You don't make enough money. You make too much money. You're too tall. You're too short. You're perfect the way you are. And I want you brothers to begin to take that. A lot of you guys did not have father figures to reinforce these things in you. You don't have that manly fatherly love supporting you in the back of your head saying, son, you can go out there. The world is yours. I'm not your fathers, but I love you like I'm your own uncle. We all want people. And so I'm telling you, brothers, I love you as a person that most people would say is successful. I'm telling you, the opportunity is out there. And most of you guys are doing much better than I was at your age. You're more confident. You got the world, you got the benefit of people like me who've made mistakes. And I want to see you ball. That's it. What's up? Welcome to the broadcast. Big shout out to Deacon Dave, member for 33 months. Big shout out to everybody in the chat room, man. Y'all hit the number one button. Go ahead and hit the number one button. Let me know you are in here. Shout out to everybody who's hanging out with me with my wrench mob at. All my guys in the wrench mob. Let's go ahead and get the super chat popping. Let's go ahead and get the cash app rolling. Somebody type rolling in the chat room. We got my man Mark the Freelancer. We got Ivy Dreams. We got TIQS. Shout out to everybody. We got a serious conversation we're going to have today. Very, very serious. It involves Sean Combs, and most of you all know P. Diddy. You probably have already developed your opinions on this man's guilt or innocent based on what you've seen on TV, based on what you've seen, based on what you've heard. And, that's fine. I'm okay with that. Shout out to my man, Demetrius Owens. So the first thing I want to address here, ladies and gentlemen, is that who I am. I'm Dennis Sperling. I'm an attorney. I'm a Hall of Fame attorney. So says the Southern University Law Center, where I graduated from law school way back in 2000. Okay. The other thing is, I want to give a big shout out to all of you guys who've been with me for a minute. Look, I stand before you today as an advocate for Black men, not because it's necessary, okay? Or should I say not because it's easy, but because it's necessary. It's times like these when we have high-profile Black men like Sean Combs, who are facing serious allegations, when we often see just how quick the world is to engage in what I call a public lynching. Even when our own community, Black men are often vilified without full knowledge of the facts. Instead of waiting for justice and the court system to take its course, we see people rushing to judgment, feeding into the narrative that our men are guilty before being proven innocent. And let's be clear, this isn't about defending wrongdoing. If anyone is guilty of any crime, they should face justice. But as a black man, we can't allow ourselves to be complicit in tearing each other down, not before the facts are fully emerged. And in cases like this, even our own people can be quick to condemn, and without even understanding the deeper complexities of wanting the truth. So I, Dennis Sperling, will not stand by and participate in this public lynching. My advocacy is grounded in fairness, justice, and truth. See, I believe that black men deserve the same presumption of innocence as anyone else, and I will continue to stand up for our right to fair treatment, not just in the court of law, but also in the court of public opinion. See, we owe ourselves that, and we owe that to each other, and to be more than just spectators of our own downfall. So let's seek justice, not vengeance. Now, let's face the truth. This is why I'm seen as the bad guy. Somebody type bad guy in the chat room. Shout out to my man TIQS. This is why Uncle D is perceived as the bad guy. This is why they call me the Blizzard King, because I am cold with it. You see? But to all of you black men out there, I'm here to tell you, go ahead and embrace it. In this society, you're already the bad guy, no matter what you do. So you might as well own it and reap the benefits that come with it. See all these super chats? Shout out to my man Jamal Smith. They love the bad guy. They love the bad guy because the bad guy speaks the truth. Shout out to Jamal Smith. Love, respect, and support from the DMV. Let's face the truth. This is why I'm seen for who I am. And here's the thing. Look at how quick people will publicly lynch a black man like Sean Combs. The moment these allegations surface, there's no presumption of innocence for us, even our own community, quick to tear us down. They're all participating in the narrative that he's guilty without even knowing the facts. And this isn't new. The world has been telling black men for centuries that we're the villains and that we're the aggressors. So I say, why keep fighting it? If they're already decided we're the bad guys, why not embrace it? Not by doing wrong, but refusing to let this label break us. Use it to your advantage. Be bold. Be bold. Be unapologetic. Be unapologetic in pursuit of success, because in their eyes, you're already the villain. Don't waste time trying to change their minds. Don't waste time trying to change those who've already condemned you. Instead, build your empire, protect your legacy, and live by your own rules. And this is why I, yours truly, will not join the chorus of looking to tear down another black man before the truth comes out. I stand for fairness. As I said before, I stand for justice and the right to be presumed innocent until proven guilty. And I stand for black men owning their narrative. And even if that means embracing being the bad guy that society already views us as. Shout out to my man Demetrius Owens. Shout out to everybody who's here already. I'm going to say some things that's going to offend you. And I'm going to say them in defense of Sean Combs, also known as P. Diddy. Somebody type "flued out" in the chat room. Somebody type "flued out" in the chat room. Now, for those of you guys who are not entirely familiar with the facts of this case, Sean P. Diddy Combs was arrested on September 16, 2024, and he faces multiple serious federal charges, including sex trafficking, racketeering, conspiracy, and interstate transportation for the purpose of prostitution. The indictment alleges that, and the indictment is out of the Southern District of New York, a very famous court, prosecuted a lot of mob bosses out of Manhattan. But this indictment alleges that Sean Combs was involved in a criminal enterprise, just like a mafia guy. And it allegedly has spanned over decades, facilitating the exploitation and abuse of women. He allegedly coerced women to participate in elaborate sexual activities and referred to them as freak-offs. And y'all can go ahead and type freak-offs in the chat room. Yeah. He allegedly used his influence, wealth, power, and power to control and intimidate them. Now, the charges are also include obstruction of justice, which with accusations that Combs used violence and threats to conceal his actions and protect his reputation. This indictment paints a picture of Combs leveraging his business empire and financial resources to manipulate and exploit women for sexual purposes. I want y'all to hear that carefully. They didn't say he held any weapons to anybody's head. They said he leveraged his business empire and financial resources, his money, to manipulate and exploit women for sexual purposes. Think about that. He says that his business empire, his financial resources, allowed him to force them to labor in that regard. There's also some charges about bribery and arson, which are also linked to the enterprise. But either way, Sean Combs has pleaded not guilty to the charges and remains in jail without bail, awaiting the trial. He could be in there for 18 months. And his legal team are strongly denying the allegations and asserting that the charges are baseless and that Sean Combs looks forward to clearing his name. Now, let's break down each one of the charges and assess whether, based on what we know publicly, the public facts, okay, that these charges do or don't apply to Sean Combs at this time. Now, sex trafficking. The legal definition of sex trafficking as far as federal law is basically a federal law on sex trafficking. It prohibits recruiting, harboring, transporting, or obtaining a person for a commercial sex act. And that's basically paid sex, prostitution, through force, fraud, or coercion. Okay? Force, fraud, or coercion. I think we understand force. I think we understand fraud, coercion. Shout out to my man, Demetrius Owens. All right. Consent is irrelevant if these elements are proven. Now, what are the elements? Under federal law, sex trafficking involves the recruitment, harboring, transportation, provision, or obtaining a person for commercial sex, a sex act. And crucially, it must be shown that force, fraud, or coercion was used, or that the person involved was under the age of 18. Now, I don't think there's any allegations of anybody being under 18 based on the public information. But so we're going to be talking about force, fraud, and coercion. Okay. Now, based on the allegations, the charge of sex trafficking appears to be grounded in accusations that Combs used coercion to force. Think about that. How can you use coercion to force somebody to do something? Either you forcing them to do it or you coercing them to do it. Okay? Nevertheless, it seems as though they use coercion to force women to have sexual acts, not necessarily with him, but with other male prostitutes. Okay? This was the whole gist of the freak off. Basically, it seems like a lot of voyeurism. I don't know who participated in what, don't know all the gory facts, but the bottom line is the reports claim that Combs used threats of violence, financial dependency. Listen to that. Financial dependency and manipulation to control these women and force them to engage in sexual activity. But what about the men? Were the men forced? Those male prostitutes, were they forced to? I'm just asking. Okay? Because we are all about protecting womanhood, right? Because they're the poor innocent victims. But I just don't see any mention of men. I notice that they bring up the women all the time. Just think about that, okay? Because they can't then say a man forced another man to do it. Then you have to go back to the coercion. I'm just saying, all right? Now, if these allegations of coercion and manipulation are accurate, this charge would likely apply. However, if it turns out that the women truly consensually participated without coercion or manipulation, this charge could be challenged. Now, there's also a racketeering conspiracy charge, and the legal definition of racketeering under the RICO Act. It requires a pattern of illegal activity carried out as part of an organized criminal enterprise. At least two predicates seem to be available, and that's sex trafficking and forced labor, and they must be proven. Okay, again, this is what they used to charge the mob with, not some guy who is a entertainment mogul. Now, racketeering is defined under the Racketeering, Influence, and Corrupt Organization Act. It involves participating in a criminal enterprise through a pattern of illegal activities to convict someone of racketeering. Prosecutors, they're going to have to prove that it was part of some enterprise that engaged in two or more criminal activities, which are called predicates, over a substantial period. And these activities do include sex trafficking and bribery and arson and some other serious crimes. And here's the thing. Based on the public information, it suggests that Combs is accused of leading a criminal enterprise where multiple illegal acts, including sex trafficking, forced labor, and bribery occurred. Now, if the prosecution can prove that Combs not only engaged, but also organized and benefited, somebody type benefited in the chat room, organized and benefited from the activities over a significant period, the racketeering charge would apply. However, this charge hinges on whether or not the prosecution can substantiate a claim that his business operations were a front for criminal activities. So are you trying to convince us that this whole Puff Daddy bad boy era was a front so that this man could transport? It was a front for prostitution? That's what you're trying to prove? Shout out to my man Kobe Cole. Why I only see men getting arrested for trafficking? Right. But I want y'all to think about that. Now, if the enterprise was legitimate, and I think we all can agree that Sean Combs had a legitimate entertainment company, right? Look at all the greats that came out of there, right? If the enterprise was legitimate, a legitimate business, and these isolated acts are not part of a criminal pattern, the charge is going to be real hard to prove. And the question is, what benefit did he get from it? It seems to me the only thing he got from watching them at his freak-offs was some sort of sexual gratification. But that's not necessarily a benefit. That's very hard to prove. Okay? I want y'all to think about how when you really start digging into the elements of these cases, they're really flimsy. Somebody typed flued out in the chat room. Basically, he was flying broads out like many of y'all have done. Now, the interstate transportation for the purpose of prostitution, this is the Mann Act, okay? And what the Mann Act says is it's illegal to transport individuals, right, men and women, across state lines for the purpose of engaging in illegal sexual activity, and that includes prostitution, okay? This charge comes under the Mann Act, and you guys, if you guys remember, there was a great black boxer. His name was Jack Johnson, and he had money and he had a whole bunch of white women. And so the federal government, he would bring them from different places, whatever. And back then, merely having sex with a white woman was basically a crime, okay? And so they basically prosecuted Jack Johnson under the Mann Act. And it basically said it's a federal crime to transport individuals, and back then it was white women in general, across state lines for the purpose of engaging in illegal sexual activity. And if you are a black man and you having sex with a white woman, that was considered illegal back then. But it also includes prostitution, which is paying for sex. Now, we're going to talk about that because some of y'all have flew some women out and gave them a few dollars on the way back home. And technically what you did is, if she anticipated being compensated for her time with you and you all were having sex, then that is technically prostitution. Somebody type flued out in the chat room. Somebody type out that you might get that charge in the chat room. Now, the key elements involve the transportation aspect, moving from one to another, whether it's through a car, bus, Some of y'all cheap, y'all are put on a bus and have her come your way, right? But it involves the transportation aspect and the intent for the person to engage in commercial sex. In other words, she's going to be compensated for these sex acts, right? And it doesn't necessarily have to be a money. You didn't have her come out there on that Greyhound bus and you promised her you were going to buy her a Louis V bag. So what you did was you went down to the flea market, right? And you got one of those Chinese made Louis V bags without the tags that somebody snuck out the back door of the Louis Vuitton plant in Xiaoming, China. Okay. And she thought you paid a couple thousand, but in truth, you paid about $20. Somebody typed $20 in the chat room. And so, but nevertheless, she's receiving something of value. That $20 purse might get you a man charge. You understand what I'm saying? I'm just saying, somebody typed flued out in the chat room. But as far as Sean Combs, these charges are tied to the accusations that Puff Daddy arranged for women to be transported across state lines to participate in these sexual activities, his freak offs. Okay, and if it's true, the women were transported with the explicit purpose of engaging in illegal prostitution. I didn't know that prostitution wasn't illegal. Illegal prostitution, then this charge is likely to apply. However, if these women were traveling voluntarily for consensual adult sex without the intent of prostitution or being trafficked, the defense might argue that the Mann Act doesn't apply. Now, again, this whole Mann Act has a racist history. It was specifically created to prosecute Jack Johnson. You understand? So, it already throws up a red flag for me. Now, the situation involving Sean Combs, to me, it raises significant concerns about the boundaries of legal authority, particularly in cases where everybody is a consenting adult. And here are some points to consider regarding what the Southern District of New York and the Attorney General's actions and their broader implications. Now, consent, right, and agency. See, the core argument is that if a woman is a consenting adult, right, or should I say, if all the participants were consenting adults, prosecuting P. Diddy for sex trafficking may infringe on his on individual autonomy. I want you to think about that. See, the legal framework around trafficking typically emphasizes coercion or exploitation. And without evidence of these factors, the case might be seen as an overreach. Utilizing your business resources for personal consensual activities, that shouldn't automatically equate to racketeering. And this legal term is generally reserved for organized crime and activities that involve deceit or coercion. If the actions don't meet the criteria, the application of racketeering laws could be perceived as misapplied and overly broad. And the same thing goes, I want you to understand, you have a right to expression in this country. You see, the First Amendment is not just the right to, it doesn't say right to free speech. It says you have a right to basically worship whatever way you want to, and the Supreme Court has interpreted that as a right to expression, okay? And in doing so, the legal actions are based on, in other words, you have a right to do what you want and hang out with who you want to hang out with. And the legal actions based on consensual adult behavior could set a precedent that limits how people express themselves sexually. And this could lead to a chilling effect. What if somebody doesn't like the fact that you kiss in public? That's your right to do that. You kiss your girl in public, but somebody calls that something bad. I'm not talking about, I'm just talking about a regular old peck. Okay? What happens when we begin to limit that? And see, this could lead to a chilling effect where people may hesitate to even engage in consensual relationships or express interest for fear of legal repercussions. Again, you have a freedom of association, and the implications of such a case like this one brought against P. Diddy, it could extend to how people associate with one another. If the government begins to intervene in consensual adult relationships, it's going to create a precedent that allows for increased scrutiny of personal and social interactions, and that undermines the right to associate freely. If you want to get together with some weirdos and have a freak off, that's on you. We have all these sexual freedoms in America. People can marry other men, can marry men, women can marry women, and all these other things. And so a broader concern is the potential erosion of sexual freedoms if consensual adult relationships can be criminalized based on subjective interpretations of legality or morality. It threatens the integrity of individual rights in matters of personal and sexual autonomy. Here's what I want you to understand. Back in the day, in Rome, the freak off was the norm. You understand? Morals have changed. Things have changed. What's considered weird, crazy behavior in San Francisco, or I'm sorry, in Texas, might be the norm in San Francisco. What I'm trying to say is that the prosecution in Sean Combs, in this case, they're prosecuting him for the actions involving consenting adults, and that should raise serious questions about the limits of governmental power and the protection of individual rights. If the Southern District of New York Attorney General's office continues down this path, it could have far-reaching consequences for fundamental freedoms, including expression, association, and personal autonomy. And this scenario highlights the delicate balance between enforcing laws intended to protect individuals and preserving rights of consenting adults to govern their personal lives without undue interference. Now, here's the thing. There's a financial aspect in there. Do you all think that these people would be coming to P. Diddy's freak off if he wasn't wealthy? See, the argument that I'm posing is suggests that when wealthy people use their financial resources to engage with less affluent people for consensual sexual activities, it raises complex legal and ethical questions. See, even if everybody is consenting, the mere presence of money and influence on one person's part introduces a dynamic that can be scrutinized under the laws like sex trafficking and exploitation. I want you to hear me. So I'm positing that consensual sexual interactions between financially wealthy people and less affluent people, in other words, when rich people have sex with poor people, that could be seen as criminal, even when everybody's agreement, even when it's consensual sex. And that perspective alone should raise concerns about the implications of wealth and power in consensual relationships. I want y'all to understand me. Let me elaborate. There's a power dynamic associated with this. See, wealth can create an inherent power imbalance in relationships. And critics like myself will argue that consent may not be fully voluntary, right? That's what they're saying. Even if everybody was in agreement that we're going to go to P. Diddy's freak-offs because he's so wealthy and they are so poor, consent may not be fully voluntary if one party feels pressured by financial circumstances. Your life, you broke, right? You out here broke, you trying to pay rent, and P. Diddy offers you $100,000 to come to his freak-off. Or let's say you a young struggling rapper. We'll call him Freak Frills. Somebody type Freak Frills out of somewhere out of Pennsylvania. Freak Frills, because he's financially compromised, he doesn't have a lot of money. He decides to participate in a freak fest, a one-on-one freak fest with P. Diddy. Okay. And because P. Diddy's rich and has a company and influential, this new rapper, Freak Frills, who nobody knows about out of Pennsylvania, he's coerced because he wants P. Diddy to give him some money. And that perception complicates the notion of true consent, as the less affluent person, the poor person, might feel they have limited options. Well, you have the option of not turning your booty up, Freak Frills. You can always have some dignity and walk away. But you're saying that your dignity is compromised by the fact that you need this money. So look at the value that we put on money. The current laws around trafficking and exploitation often consider factors like coercion and manipulation, but the line can become blurry when consent is evolved. Okay, and this leads to a potential overreach in prosecuting consensual acts that are deemed exploitative due to the disparity of wealth. The mere fact that you have more money than this broke person, right? And they give you the goods. That in itself means that vitiates consent. There's no way you can have consent from a poor person. Now, if the legal system begins to criminalize these dynamics, it could deter consensual relationships between people from different economic backgrounds. In other words, if you got some money, you got two nickels to rub together, you better leave them broke people alone. Because you having a sexual relationship with them is deemed as by default non-consensual. Think about that. Even if they consent, they're not really consenting. Even if she say, cool, no problem, she's not. Think about that. And what is that going to do? That's going to create it's going to do the same thing that Me Too did. It's going to create an environment of fear where consensual interactions are scrutinized and potentially stifling personal freedoms. Lawsuits are going to happen. And what we're looking at is the intersection of consent, wealth, and morality, and it poses significant ethical questions. Society is going to have to grapple with whether it's fair to label consensual acts as crimes based on economic disparities and what that means for personal freedoms and societal norms. And this situation could set a precedent. This one with P. Diddy, it sets a precedent where financial influence is criminalized in personal relationship. And that's going to have a chilling effect on sexual freedoms and the ability of people to engage in consensual relationships across economic lives. See, the legal treatment of consensual relationships involving wealth and power dynamic raises fundamental questions about autonomy, consent, and the role of socioeconomic factors in personal interactions. It invites a critical examination of how laws are applied and whether they appropriately reflect the complexities of the human relationship. Now, I know this is going over some people's heads, okay? But this argument raises significant concerns about societal perceptions of poverty and autonomy and consent. It suggests that the allure of money, somebody type money in the chat room, the allure of money can create a dynamic where people, poor people, and we'll just say poor women or poor men from lower socioeconomic backgrounds will be viewed as lacking agency to make informed decisions. In other words, poor people can't think for themselves. That's basically what this is saying. That's basically what the Southern District of New York is saying. These poor women who were compensated, these poor men who were paid to participate in P. Diddy's freak off, they couldn't think for themselves. They were coerced by his money. They lack agency. They can't make informed choices, particularly in sexual relationships. Now, here's a deeper exploration of this perspective. Viewing poor people as unable to resist the allure of wealth implies a lack of agency and power. In other words, you so poor, you can't say no. So anything I want to do to you, anything you volunteer to do, if somebody else in society says, that was immoral, there's no way they would have consented to that. based on how I feel. So it must be a crime in there. It was coercion. And this perspective can perpetuate stereotypes that poor people are inherently vulnerable. And that undermines their capacity to make autonomous decisions. Okay? And it reduces complex human experience to simplistic narratives of manipulation and exploitation. What it's really saying is that everybody can be bought. Shout out to my man Demetrius Owens. This is what they're doing to P. This is the experiment that they're doing with P. Diddy right now. Here's another thing. I see what's perpetuated here, the victim narrative. And this framing can lead to a systematic view of poor people as perpetual victims. It suggests that they can't make rational choices. And it reinforces the narrative that strips them of their dignity and the ability to exercise personal agency. And this viewpoint can be patronizing and positioning wealthy people, rich people as predators and poor people as poor victims without recognizing their autonomy. In other words, what they're saying is, if you poor, you can't think for yourself. If you poor, you're a natural victim. What if you're poor with a pistol? What if you're poor with a gun? The poor person is all. So next time somebody commits a crime, instead of asking the facts of the crime, we got to go look at their bank accounts and their holdings to determine whether or not they were a predestined victim or not. I want y'all to think about that, man. See, by implying that the financial desperation renders a person incapable of consent, society is imposing moral judgments on relationships between rich people and poor people. And this can create a stigma around consensual interactions, suggesting that they're inherently exploitative, regardless of the actual dynamics at play. You got a business, and you've done well for yourself. You start people off at minimum wage. Well, 2 weeks after hiring your newest 2-week hire, they send you a lawsuit and say, well, you're rich and I'm poor, and you paying me these wages is inherently unfair. And so now you got to give me a raise and make sure I get paid $40 an hour, even though I just got here 2 weeks ago. Because again, by implying that financial desperation renders people incapable of consent, society is imposing moral judgment, and it's basically saying that it's inherently exploitative. This is how far this would go. If society accepts that poor people cannot truly consent due to financial pressures, this could lead to policies that further criminalize consensual relationships across economic lines. Laws can focus on protecting the vulnerable rather than recognizing the complexities of consent among consenting adults. And that's going to lead to overreach. The other thing it's going to do, I want y'all to hear me. You better leave them broke women alone. Because if this is the direction that we're heading in, this perspective, it's going to exacerbate the class divides by framing wealth as a corrupting influence. The mere fact that you have money, now you corrupt. You were good yesterday, but you won the lottery today. And so now that you're rich, you're corrupt. And it positions rich people, affluent people, as morally suspect for their financial power. The fact that you have money, it suggests that wealth is inherently corrupts relationships. And this can foster resentment and misunderstanding between socioeconomic classes, and as opposed to encouraging dialogue amongst economic inequality. Somebody type "eat the rich" in the chat room. TIQ has excellent analysis so far on you cooking at Hot Texas Barbecue. Yeah, man. Now, if society views poor people as unable to make choices free from coercion, it can hinder their opportunities for social mobility. It suggests a fixed narrative where financial status dictates personal worth and capability, rather than recognizing the resilience and agency many people from lower class economic backgrounds possess. In other words, look, we just gonna write you off top because you're broke. You're broke, and therefore what you have to say is meaningless. So we're gonna strip your right to vote away, because not only are you a victim, but you don't have the mental capacity to even consent to what happens to your body. See, the notion that poor people's rights to make their own decisions should be stripped away based on their economic status raises significant ethical, moral questions. Because again, with the responsibility, right, becomes you got obligations. If we can't even hold you responsible for what you do with your sexual organs, we certainly can't give you the right to vote, right? And there are going to be people who say, well, we should strip away their rights. The belief that poor people are inherently vulnerable, which is what this whole P. Diddy lawsuit is saying, that he was rich and they were poor, and because they were poor and he had money, they were inherently vulnerable and subject to his coercion. What does that say in the inverse? It says that poor people are inherently vulnerable, and that can lead to others who will argue that their decision-making capabilities should be limited or stripped away. We have to treat them like children. Shout out to Lemuel Norman. I've been discussing this since he was taken into custody. They're attempting to criminalize lifestyle choices. Charging him with RICO is insane. Keep going. I am. And I'm glad you saw that, Lemuel. I appreciate you. See, what this does is, this perspective posits that financial desperation totally compromises your ability to make sound choices. In other words, if you're a broke student, if you're a poor person living in the ghetto, financial desperation, you can't make sound choices. They're basically justifying paternalistic approaches to governing the poor. They're justifying social policies that restrict the rights of the poor. And y'all think they're looking for justice. Now, what happens? There are going to be people who advocate for restricting the rights of broke people. And they're going to say, well, this is what we have to do because it's necessary to protect them from these rich people. And how rich is rich? What if you're middle class, you got a job paying you $42,000 a year, and you decide you're a 28-year-old young man and you decide to date a 20-year-old chick who works at Chick-fil-A, and she only makes $12,000. Comparatively speaking, you're 4 times wealthier than her. So compared to you, she's poor. And you all decide to enter into a consensual sexual relationship, and they say, well, you know what? He had things she didn't have. He had a car, he had an apartment, and she only had sex with him because he had a car and he had an apartment, and he gave her $40. Somebody type $40 for lunch. And she needs to keep having sex with him so she can keep getting that $40. Is that coercion? Do we need to protect this young woman who's 20 and works at Chick-fil-A from this young man who makes $42,000 a year? Well, I would certainly argue that if we're going to protect these poor people, then that's going to give rise to policies that limit their participation in economic or social activities. They can't go to football games. Football games are too expensive. Matter of fact, they can't buy anything but milk, cheese, bread, butter, and chicken in the grocery store because they can't make good decisions. So we're going to limit what they eat. And this includes consensual relationships. I'm not even talking about sexual relationships. We can't allow poor people to be friends with people who have criminal backgrounds, because poor people make poor decisions. And those people with criminal backgrounds are not going to be a good influence on them. And so what we're going to do is we're going to ban them from being able to speak to each other. Shout out to Latrell Richard. How far does this go? And this is done under the guise of safeguarding them from exploitation. See, there may be a belief that rich people possess greater moral or ethical judgment. And that leads to the idea that they should guide or control the decisions of the less affluent. You all always talking about the elite on here. Y'all love talking about the elite and the bourgeoisie. But at the same time, when you dig down deep into this P. Diddy lawsuit, basically it's saying that rich people are more intelligent, more powerful than poor people. And therefore, when there's a rich person who has sex or does something where a poor person consents, that consent is automatically vitiated. It's all automatically set aside. Because the rich person in that dynamic is the protector, while those in poverty are viewed as incapable of making informed choices. Think about that. Shout out to my man Rich Guy. He said the frivolous Diddy indictment is just more reason for men to become passport bros. They can leverage the system against you at any moment. Yeah, I mean, we've seen it. We see it happening. Shout out to my man Simple Shit TV. We see it happening. But the thing is, we're talking about the erosion of autonomy. Stripping rights from poor people undermines their autonomy and dignity. It suggests that they're incapable of making decisions about their own lives, effectively reducing them to the status of dependency and reinforcing systematic inequalities. If society accepts that poor people should have their rights curtailed, it could lead to a legal framework that codifies these beliefs. And this is going to result in laws that limit the ability of poor people, low-income people, to enter into contracts. Nah, we can't let this poor person buy a car. Better yet, we can't even let this poor person have a Metro pass. Poor people are not allowed to sign off on Metro pass, so you can't take the train or the bus to get to your job. You got to get a rich person to stand by you and be your co-signer. Think about that. Think about that. Setting aside the fact that, you know, consensual relationships, you can't even make your own personal choices. What that would do, it will further entrench them it'll further entrench the economic divides. Rich people and poor people are already separated themselves. You don't go where they go. You don't fly where they fly. You don't eat what they eat. And all this is going to do is more of that. And look at and along with this marginalization comes stigmatization. Because see, this type of viewpoint further stigmatizes poverty, categorizing poor people as others, somebody type others in the chat room, as less deserving of autonomy. And this can perpetuate cycles of marginalization and makes it more challenging for people to escape poverty or assert their rights. Limiting the rights of poor people can hinder their opportunities for advancement. And when people are deprived of that ability to make choices about their life, it stifles their potential growth, education, and financial independence. And look, some of you all understand that this perspective reinforces these negative cultural narratives about poverty, and it suggests that financial status determines a person's worth and capability. And it creates an environment where systematic issues are ignored and personal responsibility is unfairly done away with. You see? Now, when I look at what's going on with this shine, y'all still with me? Hit the number 1 button if you're with me. I done left some of you all in the dust. But it's important we talk about this in a way in which you can digest it. So the actions of the Attorney General in the Southern District of New York, particularly in the case like this one with Sean Combs, it's overzealous. Somebody type overzealous in the chat room. My man Sage talked me that this would limit our poor woman from marrying up. Yes, it would. and she could only marry poor men on her level? Yes, it would. Because in effect, she can never consent. She can't enter into a marriage contract, because if she did, it would deem to be, nah, she just married him for his money. Yeah, right, yeah. That's typically how that goes. She just married him for his money. Yeah, right? So I guess what? We nullify the marriages because she couldn't have possibly consented, because she was under so much financial distress. She had to marry him. What does that do to the autonomy of a person's autonomy? Just because they're poor, they can't consent? Think about that. And somebody says this is a bit extreme. No, this lawsuit against P. Diddy, these criminal charges against P. Diddy, they're a bit extreme. See, again, the actions of the Southern District of New York, the Attorney General's office, particularly in this case, it's overzealous, right? In their attempt to protect people they perceive as vulnerable, they're prosecuting somebody where all the parties actively agree. And this approach inadvertently perpetuates the very victimization they seek to prevent by reinforcing the idea that poor people are incapable of making their own decisions. They all wanted to go to the freak off. By framing the prosecution as a means of protecting poor women or poor men, the Attorney General's office is reinforcing, the U.S. Attorney's office, I should say, is reinforcing the paternalistic view that assumes that low-income folk, poor people, lack the capacity for autonomous decision-making. All they had to do is say, nah, Diddy, I'm going to pass. I don't want the money, right? That's all they had to do is say, nah, I'm good. I have too much integrity for that. I'll keep my job at Chick-fil-A. Somebody type Chick-fil-A in the chat room. I don't need that money. Same thing with these women who are traveling overseas to Dubai to get pooped on. Somebody type pooped on. So you're telling me these Arab billionaires and millionaires who are flying these women out, these women are inherently victims because they're poor, because their daddy wasn't rich, their mommy wasn't rich, and that $40,000 or $50,000 a year they're making on OnlyFans puts them in a deprived, poor state, and therefore they got to fly over to Dubai to get pooped on because they're in such dire straits. I want you to think about that. And on the flip side, we're going to sue these millionaires and billionaires in Dubai for some sort of international sex trafficking ring, because they're paying people to come over there, and these women would not otherwise come over there to get pooped on, because who does that, right? But for the $50,000 that they're receiving. Think about that. Somebody said 40 or 50K is a bit. Okay, $4,000. They're flying over there on Spirit Airlines to get pooped on, okay, for $4,000. Now, what does this do? Okay, what does this do to this misguided protectionism by the U.S. Attorney's Office in New York? Well, when the legal system positions themselves as protectors of a certain demographic, it can breed distrust amongst other people. Poor communities may begin to view authorities as adversaries rather than allies. And that's going to further isolate and make them less likely to seek help when they genuinely need it. Somebody typed this, my man Demetrius Owen said turd traditions in the chat. That's what's up. Now, somebody type backfire? How is this going to backfire? I want y'all to understand that. Did y'all type flued out yet? If you came in here and you haven't typed flued out, I want y'all to type flued out in the chat room. What's the potential? How can this backfire? What's the effect here? What is the chilling effect that will be had on consent? When you have an overzealous prosecution, it creates an environment where people are afraid to engage in consensual relationships or activities, fearing legal repercussions. And this chilling effect is going to stifle personal freedoms and lead to a culture of fear, where people are dissuaded from expressing their desires and making choices about their own lives. And what about the legal precedent? The legal system establishes that consent. If the legal system is able to establish that consensual interactions involving wealthy people and poor people are grounds for prosecuting rich people, it could set a dangerous precedent. All you broke chicks out there looking for the bag has flown the coop. Shout out to my man, Drew Beats. Everyone knew about Puffy. Those who wanted to go went. No one was forced to have freak offs. Correct. I've known about P. Diddy's party since I was in college, right? Think about it. Most of us have. Man's been doing it for decades. In future cases like this, it might expand expand its interpretation, leading to broader restrictions on personal relationships and freedoms. For example, similar cases could arise in contexts like sex work, where people may be penalized for consensual transactions. And that already is going to marginalize vulnerable populations. You a trick, right? You over there tricking. You and your favorite John. You in the back of that Chevy. And you back there doing your business. And the next thing you know, the cops come and arrest your favorite John and take him to jail. And they say this could not have been consensual because you are poor and he has a job paying him $32,000 a year working at Walmart. And you like, but I consented to it. I'm the 304. That's my John. This is what I do. But no, you can't possibly consent to that because you're poor and he's rich. So the government has basically just jumped into your bedroom, or in that case, in the back seat of your Chevy, and for some of you all, the front seat. See, instead of protecting the poor, these type of prosecutions actually lead to an increase in exploitation. If consensual relationships are criminalized, people may be pushed into more dangerous situations where they lack legal protections. For instance, those involved in sex work might be driven underground. And that's going to make them more susceptible to exploitation and abuse without any legal recourse. And by framing financial relationships as inherently exploitative, right? Basically, anybody who's wealthy has sex with anybody who's not wealthy. That is inherently exploitative. The legal system, if it does that, you're going to inadvertently stifle economic opportunities for low-income people, especially women. Rich men will not marry poor women because that relationship is going to be deemed inherently exploitative. So all you ladies out there looking for these high-value men, if the Southern District of New York has its way, the U.S. Attorney's Office, that relationship is inherently exploitative. So you need to go ahead and put your money on it. We need to see what you bring to the table. We need to see some financial statements before we can hook up. And what about if you're just doing business? What about if you're a new startup company and you have this other company that's worth millions of dollars and you want to do business with them? No, we can't do that. Because this business arrangement that involves financial exchanges is going to be inherently exploitative because that person has more money than you. And so inadvertently what that does is it limits your opportunity as a poor person, as a person with a smaller business that's not as lucrative. It limits your ability to engage in mutually beneficial transactions just because they got more money. This is what we're looking at. Let me give you some scenarios. I want y'all, somebody type fluid out in the chat room. Let me make it real for you. Let's incorporate the idea of withholding money or resources based on lack of sexual attention and engagement. Let's let's examine how this could be perceived as coercion. Shout out to my man Atlanta Street Interviews. Let's think about that. Somebody type these words in the chat room: sexual attention, coercion, withholding money and resources, coercion. Let's start with withholding financial support for intimacy. You got a wealthy husband, and he feels as though his wife isn't giving him enough sex or sexual attention or the type of sex he might like. You got the 1 hole, the 2 hole, and the 3 hole, and he ain't getting he ain't getting what he wants. All right. So in response, he decides to withhold access to their joint funds. And it makes it very difficult for her to go out and buy personal necessities or engage in the activities that she likes to go to. She can't go to the doggone the mall or something. I don't know. Do people even go to malls anymore? Mm-hmm. So the perception of coercion, this can be viewed as using financial power to manipulate her into providing sexual attention, framing it as coercion and creating a toxic dynamic in a relationship. Do you hear that? I want y'all to understand that. Your wife won't give you sex, so you don't give her any money to go get that Birkin bag. And now money that she don't need, okay? It's not like you know, and now you getting, that's coercion. Think about that. Or here's another one. What about conditional allowances based on intimacy? You're a boyfriend, right? And you give your girlfriend a monthly allowance for personal expenses, but you say, look, I'm going to reduce your money if you don't let me hit that 1 hole every morning before I go to work. If she ain't giving out that sloppy toppy in the morning, guess what? Your allowance is going to be short. That's the sexual activity that he desires. There's a perception of coercion in there because she doesn't want to do it, but she wants the money. And the girlfriend now feels pressure to comply with his demands for this specific type of intimacy in order to maintain her financial support. And that can be interpreted as coercive behavior. Think about that. Now, she could always just say, no, kick rocks. I'm going back to live with my mom. But no, that's not an option. Because money is so important that you have to do whatever you have to do to get it. That's what this lawsuit is saying. You have no choice. So here's another scenario. A husband changes the locks on the family home and tells his wife that she can't access their joint accounts or the house unless she agrees to bend it over and take it from the back. Right? Even if she doesn't want to. And so she has to compromise her own desires. She decided that I don't know, whatever she decided to do, but for whatever reason, she wanted to get in touch with her virginity again. And she went on strike. And he got tired of it. So he changed the locks to the house, changed the bank account or password or whatever. And it said, if you don't let me hit it wild monkey style, I'm not giving you not one more dime. There's a perception of coercion in there. And this act can be seen as using financial control to manipulate his wife's choices regarding intimacy. He didn't just strong arm it and take it, right? It's not the grape. It's not the purple grape, right? He just said, unless you come over here and break me off, you're not getting back in the house. There's a perception of coercion in there regarding intimacy. because he's created an environment where she feels trapped. I just want you to think about it. Here's another scenario. You got a wealthy person, a wealthy man who tells his girlfriend that if she doesn't engage in sex with him the way he wants it, he wants all three, the 1 hole, the 2 hole, and the 3 hole. And he wants to take them out of order. Okay? He going to 3 hole first, back to the 1 hole, then the 2 hole, and then back to the 1 hole. So she got all kind of yeast infections and fecal coliform spread all throughout her body. She going straight to the clinic, okay? And if she doesn't do that, he's going to withdraw support for her education or career development. Somebody type sugar baby in the chat room, right? You got this rich old player, right? He got his money and he got his little sugar baby. And she needed, her job is to give him what he wants when he wants it. Otherwise, he's not going to pay for her education or her career development. What does this do? There's a perception of coercion. This creates a situation where she feels, somebody type sugar baby feels that she must choose between her financial stability provided by her sugar daddy and her autonomy, framing the withholding of support as a means to control her intimate choices. That's what's going on. But she could always just hop on the bus and go home, right? Head on back to Ohio or Michigan or wherever she came from. But oh no, we can't hold poor people responsible for that. My girl Ivy Dream says she needs a job. Oh no, that's not. We could say that about these women who participated, women and men who participated in Puff Daddy's freak off. If you should have just got a job. You should have just got a job. What does that say when you have a legal system that says, oh no, getting a job is not an option? She had no choice, or they had no choice but to accept this money from P. Diddy because he's rich. Think about that. Y'all like these scenarios? Y'all like these? Am I bringing it on home? Because a lot of y'all was disagreeing with what I was saying earlier. And now you're going too far, Dennis. And now you're like, hold on a minute. That could be me. What about a man who frequently reminds his girlfriend of the financial help he provides? Now, you know I'll be hooking you up, right? You know I'll be breaking you off so you can take care of these kids around here. You know your baby daddy ain't nothing, right? You know what I do for you, I don't do for nobody else, right? You know your lifestyle, baby girl, is dependent on my generosity. Hallelujah. Right? I worked hard for my money. There's a lot of other women out here like you. What about that? When he expresses his desire for more affection or intimacy, you know you're going to have to give me that thing a little more. Right? And she says no, then he threatens to cut off financial support, because these are going to be the consequences of her lack of sexual engagement. That's emotional manipulation linked to sexual attention. And the emotional manipulation is tied to financial dependency, and that creates an environment where the girlfriend feels forced to comply with his sexual needs to maintain her standard of living. And it's only complicated. Let's say she got kids by other men. I just do it so I can take care of my kids. This is the only way I can live. Think about that. This is the door you opening up when you saying poor people are inherently disadvantaged in sexual relationships with rich people, because that's what they saying in this P. Diddy situation. Let's say you and your wife are arguing about sex, and your husband says, you know what? I'm gonna cut you off, baby. You ain't getting no more access to the bank. Now you're withholding access of sex because of a fight. And that action leaves the wife financially vulnerable. And it can be interpreted as coercive. It's clearly coercive. Look up the definition of coercive. Especially if it affects her ability to meet her own needs. And see, these scenarios illustrate how the interplay between financial control and sexual attention can lead to a coercive dynamic in relationships. When you got one person who uses money or resources as leverage to demand sexual attention, it creates an environment that, according to the Southern District U.S. Attorney's Office, where resources are leveraged to demand for sexual engagement. You understand? Think about that. Think about that. My man, Demetrius Owens, shout out to you. I appreciate you. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back. Y'all make sure y'all hit the #1 button, man.
In this burning podcast, click your mouse pad. Yeah, we out back. Hit the like, hit subscribe. Don't just hate watch, cause we outside. Let them hate watch. Go and play pop. We just lay back. He don't play that. We on playback. We on playback. We go way back. Black men, yeah, we earn something. Tune in, gotta learn something. Uncle D podcast, bump it. Likes up, hit the sub button. Black men, yeah, we earn something. Tune in, gotta learn something. Uncle D podcast, bump it. Likes up, hit the sub button. This is Dennis Burden Podcast. Don't just hate watch, hit subscribe and let them know we outside. Don't hold hate, donate. Super chat, cash app. Put something in the collection plate. Church.
I want y'all to make sure y'all hit the #1 button. And we're going to kind of get back to what we like to do over here, man. I need y'all to check in at a certain point when it's time to check in. I need to checking in to start happening again. We got to go ahead and get this algorithm pumping.
I want to see you win. And I put pressure on us men to understand how we did not get our masculinity training. And we've been doing our work, okay? But now it's time for you ladies to understand you're going to have to bet on us like you want us to bet on you. I talked to several men this week. I don't just get on here and talk shit. I have men I call around the world and I ask, what do you think about this concept? Level set me. Shout out to brother Dennis Spurley. Dennis, I'm not going to get, I don't want to tell people's business, but I'm going to tell you, high value men retire their women or make them come work for them. So ladies, what is it going to take for you to free yourself? Because you and I both know you're dying at these jobs. You're in a toxic.
All right, welcome back. Y'all hit the #1 button. So look, are you all starting to see what I'm saying? What I'm talking about? How this is a step too far and how it can lead. If you understand what I'm saying, if it's starting to register to you what's really going on, hit the #1 button. Hit the #1 button if you understand. Go ahead and hit the #1 button. All right. Yeah. Hit the #1 button. Let me see. I want to see. If you don't understand, if you have questions, let me hear them. Okay, I see people. All right. Let me give you another one, right? Let's talk about the idea of a husband or a boyfriend. He's no longer receiving sexual attention from his wife. Let's say a husband. You've been in a long-term marriage. You're in a sexless marriage. Okay? The sex is declined. You ain't hit that thing in 5 years. Okay? You got more baby oil in your house than P. Diddy. Your hands are smooth. You have rubbed all the callus off your hands, right? Because you haven't been receiving any sexual intercourse from your wife. And this is real stuff. Somebody type sexless marriage in the chat room. You've had numerous discussions about your relationship with your wife. You've been trying to rekindle intimacy. You've tried trips and roses and, and she just can't do it. She don't want to do it, right? And so you get tired of it and you decide you're going to initiate a divorce. You as a husband, you're tired of this sexless marriage and you go initiate a divorce believing that the lack of sexual engagement has fundamentally broken your marriage bonds. That's what you believe, right? Now, what happens after the separation? The wife, after consulting with her attorney and feeling abandoned and hurt, now she files a police report against you and claims that you were coercive during the marriage related to sex. She alleges that you used financial threats to pressure her into sexual activities, even if you never even had sex, right? And she cites instances where you withheld financial support when she wasn't intimate. Following these accusations, she files this police report with the authorities claiming emotional and financial abuse. And next thing you know, you downtown in handcuffs. You find yourself facing these serious criminal charges. And all you did was try to get out of a sexless marriage. You believe that justified you ending a relationship due to the lack of intimacy. But the prosecutor is going to argue that this earlier behavior constituted coercion, framing a divorce as a response to her refusal to meet your sexual needs. What are the implications? The husband could face legal challenges, including accusations of coercion or emotional abuse, which, and even if you found not guilty, the mere accusation has lasting effects on your personal and professional reputation, leading to social stigma and potential job loss. What about the stress you have to go through? The stress of facing a prosecution. That's going to take a significant toll out. It causes anxiety, depression, feelings of helplessness, particularly when he believes he acted within his rights to seek a divorce. I'm not getting any sex. I'm trying to get out of this relationship. And the mere fact that I filed for a divorce, I'm now being prosecuted. I want you to think about that. How far are we going to go? Now, of course, this is going to deter you and any other man from wanting to get married again or pursuing any other relationship. Right? Right? Heck yeah. Unless you're a fool. Shout out to my man, Demetrius Owens. Thank you so much. He said, accusations lead to ruined reputation. It sure does. It sure does. Now, again, these scenarios that I'm presenting you, they are not that far-fetched. See, these when you start getting off into people's bedrooms, right, of consenting adults, right? This is why it has far-reaching legal and social repercussions, because people have different opinions. And that's why you should stay out of that, regardless of your societal perception. It should remain, for the most part, unregulated. Now, adults have a right to make decisions about their own bodies, right? My body, my choice, right? And when the state intervenes in consensual sexual activities, it undermines personal autonomy and the fundamental principle of self-governance. And each party should have the freedom to navigate their own desires without fear of legal scrutiny. And the more regulations are imposed on sexual relationships, the greater the risk of misinterpretation and misuse of those regulations, as seen in the scenarios that I presented. Even when consensual interactions can be framed as exploitative, keeping sexual relationships unregulated minimizes the potential for legal overreach and wrongful accusation. Do you really want a prosecutor telling you what you can and can't do in your bedroom with another consenting adult? Is that what you want? Because that's what you see happening in this P. Diddy situation. And whether you all like it or not, that's what's going on. That's what's happening right now. Now, again, this situation with Sean Combs, these freak offs. This dude paid male and female participants for these sexual acts, apparently. And that raises a complicated question. And I want y'all to hear it. It raises a complicated question about consent and legality and the implications of prosecuting one party without addressing the actions of the others. Think about this. The key aspect of this scenario is that all the parties involved were consenting adults. While some may find the activities distasteful or unconventional or freaky, consent is the cornerstone of any adult interactions. You can volunteer. There's something called mutual combat where you can get together with somebody else and you guys can beat the brakes off each other, hit each other all upside the head. And even if it leads to death, it was consensual. Here, you have consenting adults swapping bodily fluids, and the state decides to jump in and say, well, because this person was poorer, because this person had less money, they could not have possibly consented. They were, of course, coerced. Think about that. Somebody say, I sound like a freak. No, I sound like the bad guy. That's what I'm trying to explain to y'all. I'm the bad guy. I'm going to be whatever I need to be to make sure that this black man is not tried and prosecuted in the court of public opinion. And I say that without emotion. I don't really care what you think because, see, I would do the same thing for you. And see, it's when you start accusing people of these sexual crimes, and let me step off for a minute. White women used to accuse black men of sexual crimes all the time and get the whole community burned down. And because it's so indefensible to step up and defend somebody for something as savage as a sexual crime, people are afraid to do it. And so it takes the villain to do it. At the end of the day, Puff Daddy and all them freaks that was with him decided that they were going to get together and do some freaky stuff. And everybody, based on the public information, all of them were grown. You got people like Hugh Hefner, who had a whole mansion called the Playboy Mansion, which should have been called the Freak Off Mansion, that did that for decades. And nobody did anything. And you got this man, Sean Combs. Yeah, he's a freak. I don't know what he do. I don't know what he like. I don't know what he do. I know that this is a black man and they're making a spectacle out of this man. And all of you black folks who are co-signing, well, you don't know what have you been doing with your parts? And who have you been doing it with? I don't care what you say. I'm going to give this black man his defense. I'm not going to be one of these people that jumps to the side of the public lynching of another black man. Somebody type public lynching in the chat room. Could it be that this lynching harks back to some of the other lynchings? Because when you start looking through history here in the United States, oftentimes the people lynched were the business competitors. They were the millionaires of their time. They were the landowners. They were the business competitors against the white folk. This Mann Act that they're using to prosecute Puff Daddy, it was specifically enacted to prosecute Jack Johnson, another very rich, successful black man who was high profile. So I'm not going to run from it. If you volunteer to put your vagina and your penis out there and somebody, and y'all have consensual sex, I'm not going to prosecute anybody for that. You a grown-ass person doing what grown-ass people do. Why is it that black men are always accused of this? Yeah, Puff Daddy might be a freak, but everybody in there was freaks with him. You want to prosecute the Johns? Why? Go prosecute go prostitute the 304s too. Put them all in jail. That's what I was getting at. Everybody involved was a consenting party. And even though you find what they did distasteful, the consent is the cornerstone to any adult interaction. If there was a mutual agreement to participate in those freak-offs, it challenges the justification for prosecuting based solely on the nature of activities. If the prosecution just targets Sean Puffy Combs for paying for sex, it creates a precedent that could also implicate the participants. Not just the freak off, but the freakies. And under the same legal framework, those who receive payment for their sexual acts, these so-called witnesses, they need to be classified as engaging in prostitution. And this raises the questions about fairness and consistency in the application of law. They are targeting this black man. They're targeting one party while ignoring the actions of the others, and it creates an inconsistent legal standard. And if the act of paying for sex is deemed illegal or immoral, then all participants, both those paying, those receiving, and those watching, should be subject to the same scrutiny. J-Lo, I know you was at some of them freak parties too. All y'all people who are in Hollywood, all of you people who went to these Puff Daddy parties, all of y'all participated because y'all watched. Whether you was getting paid or whether you was a participant, you sat there and watched. So let's go ahead and put all of these people in prison. Let's go ahead and try all of them. Let's try the politicians, the actors, the entertainers. Let's put them all in jail. You were there when the freaking was happening, right? Everybody who went to a Puff Daddy party, raise your hand. Look, I want all the attorney generals or U.S. attorneys around the country, go ahead and start prosecuting some of these people. You can't just prosecute one side because that appears arbitrary and it undermines the integrity of the legal system. And we've seen that happen already. And arguments against the prosecution hinge on the subjective moral judgments about sexual behavior. You might not like to do it that. You might be somebody who just wants to do it missionary. You might think doing it doggy style is nasty, right? You might think that's bad. If society is going to take a stance against certain consensual activities, you need to be prepared to apply that stance uniformly across all the parties involved. And see, this raises a broader question about how society defines morality and consent in sexual relationships. We know how they used to define it. If a black man has sex with a white woman, that was automatically considered amoral. That was automatically considered a relationship that could not by any means have consent. And this is where we are. So rather than targeting consensual adult behavior, our legal resources should be used to focus on genuine issues of exploitation and coercion and human trafficking. Prosecutions that stem from consensual acts divert attention away from more pressing societal problems, potentially making it harder to address real cases of abuse and exploitation. See, this situation with, shout out to my man Demetrius Owens, this situation with Sean P. Diddy Combs, it highlights critical issues surrounding consent, legality, and the implications of prosecuting individuals for consensual activities, and of course, race. As the great Johnny Cochran once said, race is always an issue. If the legal system chooses to criminalize interactions, it must apply the law consistency to all parties. It doesn't matter who they are, whether they're rich, they're poor, the tricks, the Johns, the voyeuristic people who watch. Instead of focusing on consensual acts, they might need you just stay in their lane. Now, I want to take the opportunity to thank everybody who's contributed to the super chat. I want to make sure I give a shout out to everybody who contributed to the Cash App. I want to thank everybody in the Wrench Mob. And still here, baby. We got my man Demetrius Owens, TIQS, support Black Male Media. Shout out to you. Big shout out to, we got 19 super chats. Big shout out to everybody. I like to get 20, that'll be plenty. But we got 19, and that's right on, that's clean. But Jamal Smith, love and respect, support from the DMV. Good looking out, fam. Appreciate you. Who else we got up in here? Let me see. We got time before I get to the bottom. I'm sure you guys will give me one more, so we're going to have 20. Who else we got? Uncle D, the Blizzard King. Big shout out to you, fam. Who else we got? Demetrius Owens. Hugh Hefner is the original diddler. Somebody type diddler in the chat room. Kobe, why I only see men get arrested. Right. There's another aspect of it. Because you got plenty of sugar mamas out there. Where the cougars at? Paying these, you out here buying these PS5s? You ladies out here buying these is that what they call now? These PS5s or whatever for these young boys? Huh? You need to go to jail for that. That's coercion. Right? That's coercion, right? Think about that. Blizzard King giving game as usual. Yeah, man. We speaking the truth. Excellent analysis for you cooking hot Texas barbecue. Yes, I am. Lemuel Norman, I've been discussing this since he was taken into custody. They're attempting to criminalize lifestyle choices. Charging with him, Rico, it is insane. It's far-reaching. Shout out to Latrell Richard. Big shout out to Rich Guy. Rich, this frivolous Diddy indictment is just more reasons for men to become passport bros. They can leverage the system against you at any moment. Yeah, I mean, you got two consenting adults, and here we are. Somebody's going to jail, and this man is looking at serious time, federal time. Simple Shit TV, support Black Male Media. Replay gang, Black men winning. Hey, somebody type Black men winning in the chat room. This will limit a poor woman from marrying. Yes, it would. It would, because if there is inherently power dynamic that prohibits a poor person from giving consent, then you might as well just go ahead and jump off a bridge, fellas, rather than deal with a poor woman. Okay, turd traditions. Funny. Let me see here. Shout out to you, man, Demetrius Owens. Also, everyone knew about Puffy who wanted to go, went. No one was forced to free. No, they weren't. Demetrius on 304, look at a job like a good woman, look at home. Oh, 304. Let me see who else. Accusations lead to ruined reputation. That is certainly true. Demetrius came through. Big shout out to you, Demetrius Owens again. Ghetto Hauser. Big shout out to Ghetto. Thanks for the $10. Solo Delo. Big shout out, fam. So we got 22 super chats in here. Big up to everybody who came through. Thank you guys so much. Now, what I want to do at this time is, I guess it's somewhat of a warning to men in general about dealing with women who don't have as much as you do. We used to try to uplift women, right? Right? We used to try to uplift women and bring them out of their impoverished state. Okay. But now we're in a situation where high value men might get in trouble for dating down. Right? She wants you for your money. Right? She wants you for your money. She dates you for your money. And now, but because you have money, there's an inherent power imbalance, so to speak. So where is society going with this? Where are we going with this? How we see what Me Too did in a matter of 3 or 4 years. Marriage rate is down. Men don't want to work with women at work. They don't want to talk to them. They don't want to tutor them. What's going to happen here? Huh? Because we talk about money and power on this page. And last time I checked, whether you like P. Diddy or not, the man is extremely successful. The man is he a billionaire yet? Or is almost a billionaire? And they got him locked in jail without bail? Somebody say Diddy should hire you for self-defense. No, Diddy should have not been messing around like that. Diddy should have got a passport a long time ago. That's what Diddy should have did. That would have been my advice. Shout out to the passport bros. And be careful, because they're trying to expand that man law and these other laws to use against you fellas. But because, that's what the government does. You see, you got a lot of jealous people in the government. And there are a lot of them in the prosecutor's office. So keep that in mind. Okay? But here's the thing. First off, as I said before, I'm an advocate for Black men. And if you don't like what I've said here today, that's fine, because I'm also being an advocate for Black men means I embrace being the bad guy. It is what it is. You don't have to like what I'm saying. But I'm not going to and I do the same thing for you other brothers. I'm not going to sit here and participate in the public lynching of another Black man. Not going to do it. Now, for you high value men, you're successful, you're wealthy, you're influential. Understand that your dating life comes with unique risk. Here's the brutal truth. In today's world, your status makes you a target, and the consequences of choosing the wrong woman can be devastating. Not just to your reputation, but to your finances, your career, and your mental well-being. You need to be wary of hidden agendas. Many will be drawn to your wealth and your status. Not because of who you are. They don't want to hear your story. They want you because of what you represent. Financial security, social prestige, and access to power, those are attractive. But they can also, and they will also bring manipulative people into your life. Not everyone who smiles at you has good intentions. You need to learn to spot red flags early, whether it's entitlement, a lack of personal goals, or an over-reliance on your money and resources. You need to document and protect yourself. In an age where accusations, true or false, can destroy your life overnight, you need to protect yourself. From the moment you step into a serious relationship, ensure that you have legal safeguards in place, prenuptial agreements, text communications, non-disclosure agreements, NDAs. And you need to have a network of trusted people who can verify your actions and keep help, or should I say, and can help you avoid getting blindsided by false narratives and legal battles. Look, this power dynamic is real, and you need to recognize the power dynamics in your relationships. You are not even. I don't care how much this woman tries to convince you that she's equal to you. Society doesn't see it like that. When you're the one with the influence and the resources, the balance of power can be skewed, and this can make consensual decisions appear coercive in the eyes of the public and in the eyes of the law. Always ensure that boundaries, consent, and mutual respect are clear and documented. Beware of the social media traps. In an age of social media, your every move is under scrutiny. One viral post or video can ruin your reputation, your business, and your future. Be cautious of anyone who constantly documents your private moments or seeks to use your name for their own social media gain. Some people are more interested in clout than commitment. And your financial leverage can be used against you. You spent all your life trying to get this money. Somebody type "get money" in the chat room. And if you're supporting a partner or a woman financially, understand that this can be used as leverage against you, brothers. And in the event of the breakup or legal battle, it's critical to establish clear expectations early so that you can ensure that you're not being exploited for your wealth. This is a warning to high-value men. You have got to navigate dating with the same precision, and caution that you apply to your business ventures. The stakes are too high for you to be reckless. You need to protect your assets, protect your reputation, and your peace of mind by choosing women wisely, setting boundaries, and being vigilant about the risk. Don't let your success be your downfall. You need to stay sharp, stay guarded, and don't forget, in the world of relationships, you are a target just as much as the prize. Now, let's be real for a second. This world does not give a damn about black men. They will build you up just to tear you down. And the second they smell blood in the water, everyone, even your own people, will line up to throw stones. And this is exactly what we're seeing with Sean P. Diddy Combs. Before the facts are even clear, they've already judged him, crucified him in the court of public opinion. And that's the reality of being a black man in this society. But I'm here to tell you the system is rigged against you, my brothers. No matter how much money you make, no matter how powerful you become, they're waiting for the moment to strip it all away and remind you of your place. So let me make this clear. This isn't just about P. Diddy, it's about all of us. You can be the most successful man in the world, but the second you make one misstep, they treat you like a criminal. Here's a brutal truth. You will always be the villain in their eyes, brothers. Let me say that again. You will always be the villain in their eyes. So stop wasting your energy trying to please a system that's built to crush you. Embrace it. They want you to be the bad guy. Okay, fine. Be the bad guy on your terms. Build your empire. Protect your legacy and never let them see you weak. And here's a warning to every black man listening. Don't ever think you're safe. They'll come for you whether you're rich or poor. They'll find a reason to drag you down, and they won't stop until they're taking everything from you. So get your mind right. Prepare for the fight of your life, and remember, this society is not your friend. Stay ready, stay ruthless, because they sure as hell are. This is Uncle D. I love y'all. I'm out.
Dennis Berlin Podcast. Hit the like button, subscribe.